now exiting the council portion of the meeting. We're going to be moving into the committee section of the meeting. And first up is Finance Administration Ordinance. And I will handle that for Mr. Anthony since he cannot be here tonight. The first item we have up is a presentation and discussion with Cory Johnson, the Zelenkofske Axelrod LLC concerning the ARP funds and the final rule provided by.
I'll let Cory give his introductions and stuff. I'll make copies for you guys.
Thank you.
Yep.
Good evening, everybody. How are you?
Great.
So I'm actually here with good news. A lot better than I would have been having been here 3 weeks ago because the rules have changed drastically. So I've been traveling the state doing these pretty much every night, getting to talk about, what's happened, where we started, where we ended. So you all know, mid-May last year, funds were dispersed, a rule came out called the NMO, which we were following. It was very difficult to understand, it was very complex, and it was very restrictive, would be the word. And so, Rod and I, we met a few times, we did a revenue calculation which was required under the rule, which, by the way, we thought you were going to get to use all of your money as revenue loss anyways when we did that revenue calculation, which was good news back then. But there was 4 categories, and they were very restrictive as to how you could spend funds. There was negative economic impact, there was lost revenue, which was driven by this revenue loss calculation. There's infrastructure, which is water, sewer, broadband, stormwater, and there's premium pay. And Roger and I had a long talk, and really the idea was to talk strategy, like what's best for the borough, how does the borough take these funds and really accomplish its goals, because I tried to tell all of my clients, and I guess my experience goes back to the CARES Act last year. I worked with over 40 counties in the CARES Act funding, and we helped them spend over $400 million eligible with no issues. And the best approach is always take just a blank piece of white paper and say, okay, if I was king for a day, how do we deploy these funds best for my municipality, in your case, the borough. And so I think if we started developing a plan to do that, we went through that plan in detail. There's a lot of good ideas on that plan. There were some that were pretty clearly directly eligible. There were some that were not directly eligible. And so the big change, so the final rule came out second week of January. And I apologize, I could not be here for January's meeting. The final rule came out, and where it got troublesome, all the larger entities that are receiving over $10 million, this rule comes out, end of the second week of January, they had to make a decision by yesterday, and have the reports filed yesterday as to were they going to take a $10 million exception, which is the biggest single change from the interim rule to the final rule. And it's, I brought a little handout of a presentation I've been doing around the state, so you guys can kind of follow along. But if there's one thing I can sum up as to where we started to where we're at now, it is everybody's allowed to presume that they have up to $10 million of lost revenue. Well, what's that mean? It doesn't mean you actually have $10 million of lost revenue. In fact, it doesn't mean you have any lost revenue. What it means is up to the amount you have received or are going to receive. In your case, let's use a round number. Let's use $880,000, just for example's sake. You can presume that all $880,000 that you are receiving is going to be under the lost revenue provision. Well, what's that mean? That means you're allowed to spend these funds now under provision of governmental services. So I had some clients that this was literally going over in their pocket, and they spent a lot of their funds very early. I'm telling you, a lot of clients. A lot of clients went out and did premium pay, and not that there's anything wrong with it, but paid staff bonuses and all types of stuff like that. They're sitting here now because we advise everybody, we've seen what happened last year. Take your time, develop a plan, and again, stick to that plan. How would you best use these funds in the long run to maximize your return on the investment you're going to put into your community? Some of these places have spent funds they can't take back. You did not. Roger was a sticker on, but we're going to play this right. We couldn't tell when a final rule was going to come out, how it was going to come out, but it did, and it opened up the use of these funds for you. So give you a little bit of the history of what happened. It started, they stopped being addendums to the interim rule in July. There was 5 addendums after it came out in May. And it just was radio silence. And so when it happened, the commentary period was over. I probably wrote 1,000 questions to Treasury, and asking them to address certain issues. they told us it was going to be late into the fall. So we all assumed, like, Thanksgiving time, that a final rule come out. And from my contacts in D.C., we heard one was done. The problem was there was a bill passed in the Senate. It was unanimously passed, sent to the House, in the middle of all the infrastructure wrangling in D.C. Again, unanimously passed it, really was looking to change the rules. And so I think what happened was Treasury said, okay, let's just see if this gets traction. Obviously the first infrastructure bill passed, the second one has not passed. Not looking, I don't know if or when that will pass. So what they ended up doing was kind of delaying the issuance of the final rule, but they incorporated the key pieces of what was in that legislation, one of which was this $10 million exception. And so when we sit down, Roger and I sit down to do your first report, which is due April 30th. So that report will cover the period from March 3rd, 2021 through March 31st, 2022. So when we sit down to do that, I highly advise that you take that exception. Because what it does, and we kind of have a methodology, a strategy behind how we're going to do this, and we've been advising even my county clients and my 200 municipalities, telling them all to kind of follow the same rationale. It's no different than we did last year with CARES Act, and Treasury was fine with it last year. You got to keep something, I'm going to say something, I'll repeat it so it sinks in. How you report something and how you actually spend something can be two entirely different things. Again, how you report something and how you spend it can be two entirely different things. I'm going to give you the strategy here. We're advising all of our clients to accumulate payroll dollars, because again, what has to be reported to claim this exemption is the provision of governmental services expenditures. With your payroll that is not funded by any other grant source, you can't double dip. So again, your payroll that is not funded by any other grant source is a provision of governmental services. Very similar to what happened last year in the CARES Act. So, again, using the example of $880,000, you got half of that, so $440,000. I'm going to sit with Roger and the staff, and we're going to accumulate $440,000 of salaries and benefits from March 3rd through the end of the year. And that is going to be our support for what you spend it on. So, now follow me out here. So the funds that are already sitting in the general fund that you would have spent all of a sudden become unrestricted. So we're taking away any time-down risk, any compliance risk, and most importantly, any reporting risk. Because that's going to be your issue, because now there's really not a concern on my end, and my biggest concern throughout this whole process, Treasury is building an office to monitor all this. It's scary, actually. Last year, the state monitored all the 7 of the counties state monitored, so 60 of the 67 counties. So they monitor it real time. This time, Treasury said, not only are we going to monitor every county, we're going to monitor every municipality across the entire country. That's a scary thought. But, they're building this ship as they're flying it. We've heard reports of Treasury agents out in communities where there's alleged fraud here and there, but not a lot. They don't have a lot of manpower. Look at this, as we all know. So the risk that Treasury comes back 7 years from now, for argument's sake, and says, hey, what did you do? We're going to give it to them in a bow tie because Roger and I are going to have payroll records, slide it across the table and say it's yours. That's what we spent our funds on. So again, there's some strategy behind this. So I don't know how you want to spend your funds, but I would use the word balance. And this is that word balance means something different to every municipality. Balance could mean, we got to get pieces out to the community, this piece is the police departments, and what have you. Balance in a lot of places means we don't want fund balance because we also don't want to be raising taxes during these times. There's a way you can accomplish a lot of that all within these funds. And again, it can mean something different to everybody. And so it gives you time to think about how you're going to spend these funds. You're no longer under the December 31st, 2024 deadline once we move these funds. So we're going to move half the funds here very shortly when Roger and I sit and look at the payroll. And then once you receive the other half, once we have enough payroll build up in 2022, we'll move the other funds over to your general fund for you to use as you see fit. And those, the second batch of funds, will actually report in the next year's report due April 30th, 2023. So that's really the strategy. It takes as much risk as possible off the table for the borough, and allows you to use the funds, I think, in the best manner that you see fit. And so, Roger and I work through accounting issues, auditing issues, documentation issues. That's between, me and his staff. I'll talk for a second. One of our other primary jobs is following all the other funding streams that come along with pandemics. There's a lot of them out there. I'll give you the easiest example, the infrastructure bill that did pass in D.C. Those funds have not gone anywhere. Right now, you got a piece of $362 billion. That was a state and local piece of the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan. So you ask yourself, what's in the rest of it? Well, there's a ton of other funds that overlap one another. But a lot of that was passed down to the state. So our Commonwealth is sitting on a lot of it on top of the half of the $7 billion they got for themselves. And so we're all waiting to see how they come out. The Commonwealth is like every other entity out there right now. They're very stretched labor-wise. They can work remotely. So they were having a hard time, in fairness to them, doing what was on their plate, let alone taking on a much more significant administrative burden. What I hear, I call the Commonwealth every week. I've contacted every agency. I'll give you, for instance, on the infrastructure bill, word has it that it's all going to roll through PennDOT. It's all going to be a competitive grant process. I hope not. I think it would be better, I know there's some advocating going on at the county level that, at least some of this goes to the counties, and the counties can distribute as they see fit, but that's not what I'm hearing is going to happen at the moment. But again, we talk to them every week, and there's a lot of other funds. There's a whole other assistance fund. There's the infrastructure bill. The infrastructure bill has multiple pots within it. I mean, it has, obviously, roads, broadband, sewer, water. It has a lot of pots within it that are separate buckets within that bill that are allocated to the state of Pennsylvania. I read the draft of the version that comes out. I try to go to sleep every night. But that's, as this goes along the next, up through the end of 26, anytime that we see any funding stream that could have an impact for instance, the Borough of Mechanicsburg, Roger and I are going to be sitting down, going through it. Here's how you apply. Here's what it's for. Here's kind of what you need, and I'll help them put that stuff together. It's just going to be a while. It's just everything I'm hearing, for all of the funds, the Commonwealth sitting on billions. And the only thing they're really working on right now, frankly, is a vaccine grant. It's not even going out through governmental entities. It's going to go places that can actually, distribute those. That's the one that's on their plate right now. And again, I'm not trying to beat them up. I know they're doing their best, but they're a little undermanned at the moment. So, any questions I can answer? I'm trying to give you the high-level version.
Sure. I think we'll open it up to questions from council now. Do you have any questions for Cory? The question I have is, do you recommend that we place the funds that we're going to take the ARP funds and we're going to basically move them into the general fund to pay the payroll? Is that sort of what I understand?
Yeah, look at the theory of it. So you're allowed to go back to capture eligible expenses from March 3rd, 2021 going forward. So you're going to replace funds that have this has already been paid.
Right.
Correct.
So would you recommend then putting that money into some sort of fund that would be restricted to what we approve?
I would.
Okay.
Yes, I would.
So not to just...
From a technical accounting perspective, I don't think restricted is the right word at that point because I would call it assigned. So I'm sure when you look at your financial statement, you have assigned fund balance. That's really the proper accounting treatment of it.
Okay, assigned.
Yes. You should have assigned funds, for the purposes that you see fit. And that can be fluid, by the way. You could have, I'm just making this up, but you could have 5 different categories of assignments of funds. And they can be fluid. They can, as you assign them, you can unassign them and reallocate them or what have you.
Okay.
But that should follow your master plan, would be my suggestion.
Okay.
So I have a question about our master plan. It may not be a question for you. Is there a master plan that we have once these funds are transferred over, like your white page that you developed?
That is that was done between, I think, Police Chief Neff, Chief Myers, Nate Wardle, and myself. We went through and we developed that list as to what we saw were needs. A lot of it when this first came out was trying to figure out how because of what happened with the COVID pandemic at the beginning and how we were basically shut down and our hands were tied, how we could keep the borough office running, keep borough services running. So that's what a lot of the stuff was based on. Nate put in a few, things in there. One of the big things that we're gonna have to look at, and this came out of the county meeting last night, is a very, very high expense for the new radio system in the next 2 or 3 years. So this is a fund that I think we could use those dollars to offset some of the costs for some of those radios going forward. Right now, we've allocated, I'll say it's around $30,000 of this money to the authority for the infrastructure surveys software and for the infrastructure survey that we're doing. So that's going to go towards planning things down the future. We haven't paid anything for that yet, but that'll be allocated through that. So this plan here has never been approved by council, no. It has been presented to council a couple of times, but I've never formally asked for action on this plan.
Well, and I know because the funds, we weren't touching them.
Correct.
So the next step, could we have something so that we can kind of know where we're going?
Now that we have a final rule and there's a plan going forward, and I must, to back up what Cory said, the auditor was here this week. The auditor condoned what he said. He said this is exactly what a lot of the municipalities are doing. A lot of the ones that didn't get a large sum, he's saying under $1 million, they're doing this exact same thing. Some of them are offsetting the cost of their police department and doing that route. So then that way it frees them up to use those funds however they see fit. It becomes a governmental service.
It makes sense from an accounting perspective to make it easier. So.
Well, it's just, I mean, my view when the final rule came out, it always is how do we take as many risks off the table as we can. It's the easiest one to document, it's the easiest one to consider for single audit purposes, because, that is one thing I did want to talk about for 1 second. I mean, if you spend as a borough over $750,000 in federal funds in any given year, that triggers a single audit, which is more costly to you. It's definitely more time consuming from an auditor's perspective. Maybe some wisdom in just splitting these funds across calendar years to avoid, a single audit. I don't know what other federal funds you have, but there may be some wisdom to considering that as you go through this. And it's I tell everybody there's a lot of different small funding grants out there for that might be for police radios or what have you. I mean, if you work with a grant writer, it's a great time to start pushing that. Seeing what the state will release, but I think the big grants they just haven't released the funds yet, or the programs I should say. They haven't really released how the programs are going to run.
Any other questions? Would council be amenable to placing this on the agenda for the first meeting in March to discuss the plan again and what we should be spending, what our priorities are? So we'll place that on the committee meeting again for the first meeting in March.
Right. And then, in the meantime, we get ready for our report. Cory and I will take care of getting the reporting done with Danielle involved, so that everybody's on the same page going forward, and start gathering up some expenses.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
Take care of this.
Thanks, Cory.
Moving on, we have presentation and discussion with Zach Willard from PFM on funding opportunities.
Okay, great.
Vice President Anthony apologizes for not being here tonight. He's had a death in the family, which is like.
Yeah, sorry to hear that. He did get to see this handout that we're going to walk through, so he was sort of briefed on all this. So, real high level, Zach Willard from PFM, we help the borough with things that are debt related. So, for example, in 2020, we refinanced your existing bond issues, saved a bunch of money. Last year, Melissa Hughes from my office was here. She gave kind of a presentation similar tonight, high level, informational only. That's what tonight is. We're just going to talk some general concepts and some funding options that you may have as you move forward. This can even tie into that last discussion that we just listened to with, money available for projects. I think that's essentially what you were getting told, is you can make that money available. So we'll talk about that. Feel free to ask questions, so this is, helpful. And I know you're starting off the night with a bunch of finance meetings, so I'll try not to be too long and put everybody to sleep. So if we look at this handout with the blue banner in front of you, so the borough can borrow money to do projects. The borough can borrow money on a tax-exempt basis. And what that means is, when you look at Bloomberg money or any type of financial news, you hear about the Fed funds rate, you hear about the Treasury rates. Those are all taxable interest rates. Municipalities can borrow tax-exempt, so it's a slightly different market. They're supposed to coincide with each other, although today everything's so screwed up all the time, it doesn't necessarily do that. But that's the theory, okay? And so you can do that in a number of different ways. You can do bond issues, you can do loans with banks, you can do bond pool loans, but there's all different ways that you can borrow money for projects. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about. When you flip to the first page, you're going to see an interest rate chart. Now what this is it's the 10-year tax-exempt version of the Treasury rate. So again, if you watch the financial news, you'll hear about the Treasury rate. You won't really hear about this rate. This is a benchmark that we follow. What you're hearing is interest rates are going higher, right? Everybody hears that. That's true, okay? But the sky is not falling. The interest rates are going higher from the lowest point ever, okay? So don't panic about that. They're still going to be, at pretty good levels, I would think, here in the future. If you look at the middle part of the chart, you can see, going back to the early 90s, where interest rates have bounced around, and as you see, COVID brought us to the lowest point ever, okay? So I just want to make that point. And when they talk about raising the federal funds rate, and right now that's all but baked in that rates are going to go up, 100 basis points, or even 125 basis points. That's the overnight rate. That will actually be good for the borough in the sense that you can now invest your money that you have. Right now you're going to be earning probably zero on most of your money. When that rate goes up, then you can earn a little bit more on your cash. Okay, so you can look at it both ways. But so that's kind of the interest rate update. If you flip to page 3, I'm not going to read through all of this, but some general ideas if you were to borrow money for projects, in that first bullet there, it says examples could be paving. A lot of people, have streets that need paved. You can fix sewer or stormwater. You can build a park. You can fix a pool. You can fix the road building, HVAC upgrades. You can do, a lot of things qualify for what projects you want. So when you have a capital plan, we can look through it, and between PFM and your lawyers, we can tell you if it qualifies for tax-exempt financing. Okay? One thing you can't borrow money for is for operations. So you can't go do a loan or a bond issue and then do payroll with it. Okay? That's a big no-no. As I said, there's different ways to borrow money. So once you get close, if there is a plan kind of in the future to borrow money, we're going to evaluate, should you go to the bond market? Should we do an RFP to the local banks around Pennsylvania? There's pros and cons to both. We're not going to get into all that tonight because that's still, ways away from being important. And it changes with the market. We just got bank bids back today for a city out in Westmoreland County, and rates have gone up quite a bit, and bond rates have kind of remained low. So the banks typically react, sometimes differently than what the bond market's doing. So again, it's just a pros and cons thing that you have to evaluate when you get ready to borrow money. In this handout specifically, we picked $3 million and $5 million. For the public's sake, those are just numbers that we came up with. There's nothing that I know that really ties it to that. But just to give you a general idea of what the budget impact would be if you would borrow money for projects similar to those sizes. So we'll look at that. And one thing that's important is you cannot borrow money over for a project that, say the project has a useful life of 10 or 15 years. You can't borrow money for 20 or 25 years then. So you want to be able to tie the useful life of the projects to the loan's final maturity. Okay, so that's important as we decide what projects you might have in the future. Number 2, borrowing law, federal tax law. The important point there is you have to have real projects. You're expected to spend the money, 85% of it, within 3 years. What they don't want is exactly kind of what we're hearing now as we go around places that have projects, potentially down the road. Oh my gosh, rates are going up. Should we borrow money now and figure out the plan later? No. Shouldn't do that. You figure out what your projects are, you get planned, and then you borrow money where the market is, okay? Sometimes you can borrow money a little early, but you don't want to just borrow money because the news says that interest rates are going higher, okay? And I wouldn't think that we're going to do that here, but I just want to say that out loud. And the last one, bank qualified debt. What that means is if you borrow $10 million or less in a calendar year, you get beneficial treatment. We talked about that previously during the refinancing process. I'm not sure that's super relevant tonight, but we'll just keep that in mind as well. All right, so the next page, page number 4, looks like this. So this is your existing debt, all right? So your existing debt is broken into 2 pieces. Okay, if you look at the 2 banners, columns 2 through 4, that's your general fund debt, right? You don't really have very much general fund debt. For a borough this size, that's very low. So you have payments of about $130,000 the next 2 years, then the payments drop down, okay, so you do have some flexibility there. And then the payments, really go away in kind of the next, 8 years, but those are extremely low payments, okay? So if you would have general fund projects, you could fund to some extent projects that you wouldn't even have to increase your debt service budget. Because right now you're at 130 and it's going to go into 20,000 very quickly. Does that make sense, that concept? So if you level funded your general fund debt service budget, you'd still have 130,000 there, but you're really going to have space, you're going to have room if you would want to do something. Okay? And then on the sewer side, that's where most of the borough's debt is. You have about $9.5 million of sewer-related debt. That's paid for out of sewer revenues, not general fund revenues. So we like to break it into the 2 buckets. And you can see those payments run at about $800,000 a year. Okay? So that's your existing debt. If you do nothing, this is what's in your budget every year. This is what it looks like. All right? So now let's hop into any questions about that before we look at some sample numbers. Very good. You better wait. Yeah. Okay, so the first page, page 5, is kind of this colored summary page, and this is just meant to be high level. So if you were to borrow $3 million, what we did is in the blue, in columns 1 and 5, we ran that over a 10-year payback period. Okay, 10-year payback period is typically pretty short for a municipality or a school district or a county or authority, but we just want to show you. So the concept is, you have about payments of about $350,000 a year, okay, over the 10-year period. Now, if you went to a 15-year amortization, in the second piece in the red, in column 6, you can see your payments drop from $350 to $250. But you have debt that goes out 5 years longer. So it's a similar concept to home mortgage. Most people do a 30-year mortgage because it's the most affordable payment, but you know that you're going to be paying more interest over that 30 years, but it's the affordable payment. So same concept, if you look at the total interest between columns 5 and column 6, you can see there's about a $300,000 difference. So you get $100,000 less of a payment, but it costs you $300,000 over that 15-year period. Okay? And then the green is if we went to a 20-year payment, the payment drops down to about $200,000. All right? Now we picked 10, 15, 20 years are just general. I mean, you can do a 14-year loan, you can do a 9-year loan. It doesn't, you're not held to anything. 30 years is about the maximum. If you're financing some big sewer stormwater project, the useful life of the pipes and the infrastructure typically is long, so you can go out to 30 years. And if you're financing shorter things like maybe a road, for example, typically that could have a 15 to 20-year useful life. So again, we just got to make sure we find all that out. But so that's a rough budget impact for $3 million. So that's basically what we want you to take away from this is, okay, if we do $3 million projects, we're looking at payments of something between, $200,000 and $350,000 in the budget. Okay, that sound good? The second page is $5 million. Same concepts. Obviously, if you're going to borrow an extra $2 million, the budget impact's going to be bigger. So you can see over 10 years, we're at about a $580,000 payment. 15 years, it drops down to about $420,000, and over 20 years, it kind of gets back to the $3 million type payment where you're about $350,000. Okay? Everybody get all that? Now, the last page, what we did was, we kind of different way. A lot of our clients, everybody has a different situation. So instead of saying we need $3 million of projects, we can say, well, what do you want your payment to be? Okay? So in this scenario on page 7, we solved for what is a $200,000 payment. So if you want a $200,000 payment over 10 years, you can borrow at the top there about $1.74 million for the project. If you did a 15-year payment, you can get about $2.4 million out of it. And if you do a 20-year payment, you get about $3 million out of it. So again, just a different way to think about it. So if you said PFM, we want to keep our budgeted payment, at the $130,000 that we have in our budget now, or we think we can increase it to $218,000. This is a different way to think about it. Here's how much money you can get for your projects. And then you can combine that with, for example, the money that was just being spoken about in order to complete some type of capital plan. So again, concept-wise, we just need to take away from it that we can kind of solve for what it is you need or what it is you want to do, and there's different ways to think through that. All right. So is that helpful from a high level to look some numbers? This is the type of budget impact you should expect. Now, if we did this today, these numbers would be better. We have kind of interest rate cushion built in here because we know that this is a ways away from happening, and interest rates generally are expected to go higher. So again, if you went out today, you'd see better numbers for a $3 million, but we know this is still in planning stages for sure.
So what's the time frame like from when we make a decision on borrowing to when we get the money and
Sure.
start projects? And what's the difference between like a bank loan and the bond issuance in terms of timing then?
Yep, good question. So to go to the last page, page 8, now if we were really doing something like when we did the refinancing, we have a very detailed timeline that has a lot more on here.
Mm-hmm.
But what this is going to show you is, once you say go, okay, we're going to do this project, it's $2.4 million, go get money for us, PFM, okay? Typically, I think you can look at 90 days, we can make things happen. Now, there's all the planning that happens before that, when we come to meetings and we explain it, and then you're going to have to approve a debt resolution at some point. But once you say we're ready to actually go to the market, 90 days. Now, a bond issue typically takes probably an extra 2 or 4 weeks. You have to get a credit rating when you do a bond issue, so that takes a little bit longer. Bank loans you can be a little bit quicker with the RFP process, going out to banks. But I still think, try to think through a 90-day is how quickly we can get you money, once you're ready to do something. Any other thoughts or questions?
I have a general question.
Sure.
Do you know, or does anyone know what the borough's borrowing limit is, or debt capacity overall?
Well, I don't know off the top of my head, but I do know that, so the sewer debt, if you go back to your existing debt page, the sewer debt doesn't count against your borrowing rates, okay? Because that's paid for by the sewer revenues, it's exempt. We did a special thing when we did that refinancing, a self-liquidating debt report, and it shows that the revenues coming in from your billing are there to pay for the debt service, therefore it's not on the borough's borrowing capacity. So really you have about $350,000 of debt on the books, technically, for the borough. So your borrowing capacity, what are your annual revenues? Roger, off the top of your head.
Coming in?
Yeah.
Total, probably about around $7 million.
Yeah, so you'd be, well north of $10 million. And depending on what the projects are, again, if you borrowed money for stormwater or sewer, we'd probably, decide if we should go through that same process or not. If you borrow money for paving or for building improvements, that would go against your borrowing capacity.
Thank you.
Yeah. And just to be clear for everybody in the room, the borrowing capacity is a limit set by the state. It's a formula. And it's just a legal limit. It's not, a guide that you should borrow up to your capacity or anything like that. It's just, I know you know that, I was just saying. Yeah. Some people get confused and know the ballpark.
Any other questions?
Okay.
So when you go out to banks, what do you need from us, to prepare for that process? in terms of like a capital improvement plan, or do you need something from like a plan developed by our engineer, or like, what do you typically have when you go out to bank to say this is what the borough Mechanicsburg wants to do? And
Well, so there's a lot of answers to that question. So if we're gonna do a bond issue, okay, the credit rating agency will ask lots of questions, they'll go through an interview process with Roger. And they will ask a lot of questions about the financials, what's your capital plan, show us your capital plan, do you have policies, and so it's a little bit more complicated. When you go out to banks, they're not really gonna ask a lot of questions about the project. They're going to assume that, with your professional team and your lawyers and PFM, that this is a real project that fits into the tax exempt bucket, okay? So what they're gonna wanna know is they're gonna wanna talk through your audits, the last 3 years of audits, future budgets. You do have a credit rating, so they wanna, probably talk about that, even though it wouldn't be applied to that piece of debt, but you have one. That would be what you would do for the RFP process. And, we send it out to typically around 35 banks. It's local banks here in central PA, which we have very strong local banks. And then we also send it to banks that are just all over Pennsylvania. And some even outside of PA, they just have branches in PA. And we really get bids. If you remember, in 2020, the leading bid, I think actually was JP Morgan, which, has branches, and you don't think of them as a local bank, but they, they do play in that space, and we just want the low bid, so. Does that answer your question?
I think it's very helpful for you to be here tonight and to present this information. It gives us a good idea of how to finance things that borough desperately needs in terms of infrastructure upgrades and things that council can consider moving forward this year when we plan to tackle our capital improvement projects, and very helpful.
Two takeaways. One, I live right down the road, so you're very close meetings, so I'm happy to come back. Two, feel free to use us, so when you're going through this process, get different schedules from us. Come out to us and say, hey, no, we want to look at, 3.2 million, or, give us an update on the market. Don't be shy about asking for things to help you through your planning process. Okay?
We appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Sounds good. Thank you. Moving on to Manager Sosowski for audit report update.
Very quick, he was here, completed the audit Monday, Tuesday. I think he was out, that was last week. He was here Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Finished up Thursday. There's a list of a few items that he required for me to send over, but other than that, he's done with both the authorities and the borough councils in the boroughs. So both of those are done. We should be looking at something coming up not too far down the road.
Okay. The next item we have is discussion on the treasurer's report. I believe Councilman Vice President Anthony asked for this to be put on. He just wants it to be a standing item in case anybody has any questions on the report, that they're able to ask the questions and get them answered. Does anybody have any questions about the treasurer's report? Overall, I thought it was a very helpful format. I really appreciated it. It was good. It was very good information. So thank you to the treasurer for putting that together. We really appreciate it. The only question I had was on, at the last meeting, I asked a question on the legacy park funds.
Yes.
And Manager Sosowski, you stated that the funds that Legacy Park contributed most recently was almost $70,000.
The rec fund, yeah, the two
was placed in the general fund, and my question to you is, do we have that placed in how did the auditor describe that? Assigned fund, like an assigned fund.
The original $100,000 is at Citizens and a rec account. Yes, and that's where, because we were getting a very good interest rate at Citizens at the time. So the $100,000 original was in there. The two other ones, we have not transferred those yet. I mean, we can transfer them over, but there was an agenda item, or not an agenda item, but a discussion item down later that we may want to look at it's in a capital fund, it's in a money market account.
I just wonder, I'm just aware from the developers, from standpoint, I think maybe there's some restriction on where we can keep those funds, is that correct?
No, I don't think so, I think it's what we can spend on one.
That's correct. There are restrictions of the municipality's planning code in terms of how the funds can be utilized.
Right.
So because these are payments from a developer in lieu of dedication of recreational facilities, your funds are to be utilized for recreational purposes.
Right.
So there are no restrictions, or I should say, there are no requirements under the municipality's planning code in terms of how the funds are maintained by the borough in terms of in a separate bank account, but they should be set aside from an accounting standpoint in a designated fund, which can be part of the general.
It's not a designated line item, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so they're in a designated fund, perfect.
Yep.
That was my question. Thank you, Solicitor. Moving on, we had an update under Finance Administration Ordinance on January 3rd for the administrative status of 426 West Simpson Street, and I'm going to ask Manager's Associate to provide his update again this evening on where we stand.
There's been some action on that property since we've had the discussion, and I provided the council tonight a pretty stout package of papers that we got. At this point in time, approved code has been over to the site. They've passed everything that's over there, the one that was done with comment back in December. Those inspection reports are included in there, so inspections are up to date as far as that goes. We did have a discussion with President Miller, Solicitor Cassidy, myself, had a telephone conversation with the chairman of the HARB, Mr. Haynes, about his letter, and the fact that at this point in time, the applicant has made certain changes to what he plans to do up there, and he is now going to have to go in front of HARB for a review of what he's changing on the front of that building. So that is happening. That's set for next Monday, is when that meeting scheduled to take place. So because Mr. Haynes has involved himself in the situation that he is, Solicitor Cassidy made the recommendation that he recuse himself from that meeting, at least for the vote and the discussion on that property, since he voiced his opinion on what he thought was there. To the rest of the issues that were raised, we verified with approved codes that they have reviewed this under the International Residential Code. It meets what they reviewed. This is one of those situations where, to use a term, when we've used this term here before, past practice, you've heard that before. This is a situation where people have been allowed to rebuild what was there existing if they could do it in the same footprint, and that's exactly what this situation is. There were 4 apartments there before the fire. Now he's going back to 3. So that's kind of where we're at right now. The building's going to be no larger footprint-wise. There's actually going to be 1 less apartment in there. So we're kind of in good shape. However, because of this situation, we're going to look with approved codes, Solicitor Cassidy, myself, and the codes departments to try to see if that past practice grandfathered situation can be looked at to see if there's a percentage, because this building was, for all intents and purposes, destroyed. Because of what we've done in the past with these same situations, people have been allowed to rebuild what was there. The perfect example would have been the house back there on Railroad Street that burned about 2 years ago. That could have been rebuilt exactly like it was. Barring zoning review, barring stormwater, the whole 9 yards. This is the same situation we have up here. So this is a practice that's been in place in the borough for quite a long time. And using this particular situation as an example, we're going to try to look to see if we can improve this going forward.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Zelenkofske from council? Like the manager said, we're going to use this incident with 426 West Simpson. We're going to take it as a case study to improve the way internally we review building permits and the way that the building permits are then reviewed to go to HARB. So we will be, at a later meeting, we'll be examining that process with Solicitor Cassidy and trying to improve how that works internally.
That'll be a complete revamp. We're going to be updating applications the whole way across the board and everything. So.
Thank you. Moving on to municipal and community outreach, Councilman O'Neill.
Yes, the active work that we're doing is a website project. As many of you know, the borough's website is not working well, and that was for a variety of reasons, but mainly because our vendor failed to meet the obligations, and so we are now working to determine what is the best way going forward. So the team, the committee, is working to determine what possible vendors there are. We've done some research. We've benchmarked against some other municipal websites in the area and outside the area. So that work continues, and we're making good progress. We hope to be interviewing or seeing demos from some vendors in the near future. I have no library report this time, and nothing from the school board.
Okay. Thank you very much. Work continues on the website. Moving along. Community and economic development, since Councilman Buhrig is not here tonight, I will pass it to Councilman Agerton.
Thank you. So I guess should have Rebecca. Rebecca, if you'd like to speak.
Thank you. Welcome to the new councilors, and I'll be meeting with all three of you shortly. I have a really bad cold, didn't want to meet with anybody for a while. You've probably noticed, if you haven't, I wanted to point out the Thank You Firefighters banner on the front of the Gingerbread Man building. I know there were a lot of other emergency responders involved in that too, so his way of showing appreciation. His Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board hearing for the Economic Development liquor license has been scheduled. It is in March. I will be testifying, and I know that there are several others who have been asked to do the same. We're getting another bakery, Massimo's Italian Bakery. This is, you know where Pizza Hut is, this is the other end of that building. It's owned by an investment group. Jim Gee is one of those partners. They'll be opening in March, and they're not limited to just baked goods. They do have some entrees, and they also do catering. I continue working with Chef David Mills to look for a new, larger location so he can expand everything that he does now and add some other features and offerings too. We looked at a property today that we're pretty excited about. It'll be an easy project for us because it's just impossible, and usually they're worse than that. There's a lot of legs to that one. Tricky, but we'll see what we can do there. There's some other things that we're still discussing and negotiating. This looks to be a better option at this point. Tim Blayman, who has Davis Country Living, the retail store, the Country Living store, and then the equipment store, one across the street from this building, one next to the building. Those are both for sale, and we're talking with a number of different interests looking at both of those. That's changed a little bit in the last week, and that it's opened up a little bit more with some new parties coming forward who are interested in it, for especially the building next to the Borough building, for a variety of uses, really different sorts of uses. The DCNR C2P2 grant round opened a couple of weeks ago. It closes in April. That's for recreational facilities, parks, trails, waterways, outdoor recreation, a lot of different things. That the threshold for the grants is generally determined by the population. There are different thresholds there, and I believe you've used this grant before, right? Yes. So that's open. The Community Development Block Grant funds for Cumberland County, which we administer, that round will open by March 1st. You will be notified of that, along with program guidelines and so forth. You typically have 1 month to apply. It can be used for a lot of different things. Our loan program comes out of that. The Street View program comes out of that. Housing repairs, emergency repairs, ADA accessibility project, and some other public services. And I did send to the members of the Loan Review Committee, the Borough Loan Review Committee, a set of information about past projects, how that program came about, what the outstanding loans are, the process, the guidelines, and so forth. So you all have an opportunity to take a look at that. I will report that all of the loans are now in good standing. They're all paid to date, and we are flush with money. We have quite a bit right now with several loans that were paid off very early, including Smoke and Pickles. That was one of them. That's what I have. Anything for me?
Thank you for sending that information to the Loan Review Committee. We have an entirely new board, so that's very helpful. I've heard from them, so it's been very helpful.
Good, great. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thank you.
It was quite detailed.
Yeah.
Thank you. We appreciate everything you do for Mechanicsburg. I do not have a report from the Planning Commission. Do you have anything?
There's been nothing come in yet.
All right. And then it will be my first meeting on Monday with HARB, so I will come back with a report next month. And then for Downtown Partnership, I know everyone probably is on Facebook, Cha-Cha Chocolate is canceled due to the COVID numbers rising. But the next event is coming up on April 16th for Earth Day. So it's always a really great event if you guys have not been out to it. Rain barrels, lots of good vendors, and lots of good things to do. So we appreciate Downtown Partnership for that. And they're still discussing the taking down of the building at 1 West Main. So we are looking forward to a beautiful day downtown. And that is my report. Wait, I take that back. In the notes from last time, it did have a question about EPB being able to come to one of our meetings. Were you able to get a hold of them, Robert?
Yes, we're going to, because of the amount of discussion that we have tonight, we asked if we could put them off until the first meeting in March.
Perfect. Thank you. We appreciate that. Because, you know, Councilman Bucher needs to go to sleep. All right, that is the end of my report. Thank you.
Been here for 2 years, she can bully him.
Moving on, Councilman Bucher, Public Works and Safety.
I'm going to roll down the list here and offer the floor to the police chief first to see if she has anything to add to her report that she provided.
Yes.
And then fire chief, is that?
Yeah, I have a report, if you like me to just read it quick.
Sure.
Okay, first fire chief's report. The following objectives were completed by the fire department in the past month. Main Street building fire is the first item. I'd like to recognize another job well done by the firefighters of MFD. Early on Friday, January 28th, cruising dispatch to the fire on East Main Street. Upon arrival, we found in the back of an apartment building, 23-105 East Main, with flames engulfing the second floor. All hands went to work on fire attack and search for any victims. With quick and hard work, our firefighters stopped the fire from extending into additional buildings. Much credit goes to the Mechanicsburg Police Sergeant Timothy Dollar and Officer Justin Myers for their assistance locating a tenant on the first floor and helping evacuating exposed buildings. Although through teamwork, police, fire, and EMS, we can constantly raise the bar for public safety, And I use the words constantly, when I be proper, adequate, instead of continually, but it seems to be the frequency level of it is so high between auto accidents, house fires, and EMS calls. We're always working together. Second item, federal grant. MBFD, Mechanicsburg Volunteer Fire Department, submitted a FEMA grant for replacement of self-contained breathing apparatus. When awarded, the grant will support funding for approximately $200,000 worth of equipment. Our grant application carries additional priority points as our current equipment is considered outdated to industry standards. We are hoping our grant is awarded this coming year. And then the last is firefighter training. Crews are kept busy learning the value of infrastructure and municipal water supply. Knowing our firehouse locations, operations and locations is key to establishing adequate water to the fire ground. Recently, one hydrant froze in the open position at the fire on Main Street, which required assistance from sewage water. Additionally, fire operators must assure the hydrant is drained thoroughly during sub-freezing weather. End of the report.
Thank you. And then over to EMC Report.
Thank you very much. Just a few things I wanted to highlight. The one was that, as I said in my report, I had an individual reach out to me about potentially starting a community emergency response team in Mechanicsburg, or a CERT team. This would be the first municipality in Cumberland County to have a community emergency response team, and out of the surrounding counties, only Mount Joy has one of these teams at this point. So very excited. It's actually one of the newer firefighters who reached out to Chief Neff and was shared with me about the potential of doing that. This would be really exciting for the borough. One other thing that I wanted to discuss is providing more thorough COVID-19 update in my report. The good news is that cases and hospitalizations have continued to trend down over the last several days since my report was submitted. In fact, we're down another 1,000 plus hospitalizations, down to around 14,800, which is good news. We'll hope that that continues to trend that way. Willing to answer any questions anyone has as well.
Thank you, EMC Report. Then it looks like we're gonna roll over to engineer for our RoadBotics update.
Thank you, Councilman Bucher. Good evening, everybody. My name is Cory Johnson. It's my first meeting. I was a COVID victim, if you will, at the last meeting, but nonetheless, here tonight to talk a little bit about our robotics program and to flashback for some of the newer council members. Robotics is a artificial intelligence type of analysis software that basically we took an iPad and drove the streets of the borough, and it captured a number of images. I think it's well over 1,000 images of the streets of the borough. And that has been analyzed against thousands and thousands of other images, across the country to create a rating system by which the borough can take a look at the actual street here. Roger, I'm going to hijack your display if I can. Of course you will.
I will give you permission.
So all of that information is basically loaded into a GIS mapping software, which is another project of the borough that we're working on currently, to create a unified kind of report in a color-coded manner of the status of the streets of the borough. So we take a quick look at the actual data collection. I'll turn this off for a minute. You'll see all these dots. They represent all the data collection points, and they are color-coded, anywhere from a green to a red. Red is good, red is bad. And then on top of that, it's further kind of extrapolated to create this overall picture of the borough. From that overall picture, and it's taking a little time to react, we then also, or the software also then creates an analysis of the status of the borough. Stand by.
It's the connection.
Thank you. All right, there we go. So, the good news and bad news. As you take a look at the same colors in the pie chart, are correspond to the actual 1 through 5 rating of the individual road segments. So essentially, in round numbers, 10% of our roads are really good and 10% of our roads are really bad, and then obviously the remainder are in between. The overall road network score was a 3, so on a scale from 1 to 5, we're kind of below that, that 50% benchmark. But the interesting part is if you just take kind of take a look at the lower end, which would be the red, the orange, and, possibly portions of the yellow, obviously, that constitutes the bulk of the actual, road network within the borough. So this is not new news, we've known about this for a long time, and it actually allows, from an analytical standpoint to actually put some kind of numbers to what the current status of the infrastructure is. What does all this mean? And you can take it a couple different ways, but at this point, it's just kind of a starting step-off point for us to be able to take a look at our, capital improvement requirements. And here's the scary part. So you look at 10% of our roads are really bad. You take our 32 lane miles, roads, total road miles. 10% of that 3 miles. You take a look at what it costs to really remediate a bad road. That little hunk of the pie alone represents about $3 million. Then you start going around the pie, multiply that by 10, all of a sudden that $3 million becomes $30 million. And that doesn't count ADA ramps, it doesn't count the stuff underneath the streets that needs fixed typically before we even go in to do a road project. So while we, talk about ARPA funding and all kinds of other stuff like that, $440,000 doesn't go anywhere when we start talking about infrastructure. It's really scary. So in terms of the bigger picture, this is something that for years, and it's not just the borough, it's every municipality, generally benchmark their road improvement programs against liquid fuels funding. That's the funding we were pumping in every year, so whatever came in was usually used in that given year and went back out. But we're seeing that particularly in the last 10 years, the demands on what it really takes to keep a road network maintained to a reasonable standard is well above the cost of that road funding. So the challenge for council as we move forward, of course, is to figure out where that money comes from. And as we go on day by day, unfortunately, the longer we wait, road status or road, condition exponentially decays when it gets to the last, 5 to 7 years of its service life. So, a lot of that, particularly that orange, is going to become red real quick, and a good portion of that yellow is going to become orange real quick. So that's kind of how that breaks down. So in terms of not, the longer we wait, the worse off we are, and it's hard to swallow, if I stand in front of you and say, I need $20 million, over the course of 20 years, but that's, those are the real numbers that we're talking about. And it's not unique to the borough, this is an issue that everybody's facing, obviously. Everybody saw what happened in Pittsburgh last Friday morning, so, it's something that, is a bigger problem, across the nation, so. So, just to kind of close up the RoadBotics portion, this is just a draft that was issued us last week, so we're going to go through it and kind of start it and clear it up, but ultimately, what we will be doing is taking that original, I hesitate to go back, because I don't know how long it'll take, that original map, and then actually incorporating that into our GIS platform that we're currently building. So, by springtime here, we'll have that all available, to the public on the website and, through the platform, and then also have, sewers and storm sewers and other things that will be sitting underneath this kind of mapping to be able to provide some better information on that situation, so. Any questions for me at this point?
Not a question, but a comment that I took from the county commissioners meeting last night is that their worry, their prediction is that liquid fuel is going to start continuing to go down with electronic cars. So this is something that we definitely have to have a plan with because the money coming in is going to get less and less.
Yeah, we had a pretty significant spike at one point, and then it kind of leveled off, and then boom, all of a sudden it started doing some crazy things, and people are certainly seeing the trending of last 2 years. It's fallen off. So, the reality is you probably are going to start looking at that more as a vehicle to pay for your salt and more of your maintenance type of things than your actual, capital improvements.
So when you're looking at the orange, is during the lifespan of like less than 5 years to complete decay? Like, is there an estimate or?
I would think red's clearly there, already there. Yeah, I would think 5 years is probably a good number. The yellows are probably 5 to 7, depending on where you're at. There's probably a cutoff. And, we can't also lose sight of the fact, like, the light greens, you know, the twos, like, if we can invest a substantially lower amount of money to crack seal and do some other things for that, but, you know, when we talk about that as a holistic program, same thing, that could be all of your liquid fuels money in a given year, that could go towards something like that, but that could be a combination of trying to save what we have that's good, and then fixing what we have that's bad.
And I'm imagining technology doesn't change that much with paving, it's gonna be pretty standard.
Yeah, and we've over the years looked at other options related to microsurfacing and some other, you know, kinds of Band-Aids, and once again, they have their place in specific areas within the borough, but the hard part is once we get to the orange, you know, we're not in good shape, you know, and particularly with the borough, our underlying soils are a lot of clay, and what happens as soon as we open these roads up, it's very, you know, it's like opening that treasure box. You know, sometimes we get out of there without doing a whole lot of work, other times we spend an additional $300,000 that we get out of there. So, it's always, you know, there's a lot of variables when you get into those types of things.
Thank you.
Flying cars would work too. So.
Greg, where did 32 miles come from?
That's the measured distance in the, that came out of RoadBotics.
So that's 6 miles more than what PennDOT gives us code for.
No, that probably includes some of the alleys and stuff too.
Okay. All right.
And there are a couple state roads on there, I think that they, and it picked up kind of, I want to say by mistake, but that's really what it is.
So you're putting alleys on the paving plan.
And yeah, it's a really good point, you know, so, we did not do the middles of the alleys, we did the middles of the alleys, that's not even included.
And you don't have any legacy park included in any of that, so.
Correct, yeah.
All right.
All right, thank you. And then, we'll hand it over to the solicitor to discuss the sanitary sewer, asset transfer.
Certainly. So I have a memorandum for council, which I will pass down to Mr. Bucher, if you mind passing along. And this is really for council members to read between now and hopefully the next council meeting. But I put together a brief summary of the history behind the Mechanicsburg Municipal Authority, and which was established in 1946 for the purpose of funding and constructing the wastewater or sanitary sewer system here in the borough. And at some point in those intervening years, then the municipal authority went into a hiatus status, and the borough owned and operated the sanitary sewer system for close to 50 years, as far as the research can tell. Back in 2018, council made a decision to reinstate the municipal authority. That was driven in large part at the time to allow for the municipal authority to operate the stormwater sewer system, so that the authority in turn could impose and collect a stormwater management fee on the owners of properties within the borough. The reason for that is that under the borough code, borough council is not authorized to impose a stormwater management fee. Unlike the neighboring townships, under the first-class township code and the second-class township code, townships can impose a stormwater management fee. So because of the lack of authority in the borough code, council took the step to reinstate the authority, to give the municipal authority the power or the authority to impose the stormwater management fee and to operate that system. And that's necessary because of the obligations that the borough has under the federal MS4 program to have certain standards and meet certain quality requirements in terms of stormwater output under the Federal Clean Water Act. So the only way, frankly, to fund the stormwater management obligations is through the imposition of this fee, and the only way to impose that fee is through the authority. So that piece all makes sense with respect to reinstating the municipal authority. What this memorandum covers, though, is the other piece of of the sanitary sewer system and whether or not it makes sense for the borough to convey the sanitary sewer system to the authority and to have the authority operating that system. In a nutshell, the memorandum goes through basically three basic options available for council in terms of moving forward with respect to the sanitary sewer system and as it relates to the municipal authority. It's important to understand that currently and over the last 50 years or so, the borough has owned the sanitary sewer system. The borough has staffed the sanitary sewer system in the operations and maintenance of the sanitary sewer system, and the borough has provided all the administrative services related to operating the sanitary sewer system. In between 2018 and 2020, the borough undertook a process by which the operational and management decisions with respect to the sanitary sewer system were transferred to the municipal authority, but the borough never completed the process of actually conveying the assets to the authority. So there's an existing operations and management agreement between the borough and the authority with respect to the operations of the system, but yet even under that agreement, the borough is still providing all the manpower associated with the day-to-day operations and all the administrative services related to that. So currently, at least over the last 2 years or so, the municipal authority board has been making decisions with respect to operations and management issues, improvements to the sanitary sewer system and whatnot. But yet there hasn't been a formal decision made with respect to the ownership of the assets. When I came on board as solicitor in January 2021, and a little later that year, I was asked to take a look at the transfer of the assets, and that really caused me to take a closer look at the relationship between the borough and the authority. And at the time, it begged the question for me, based upon my experience representing municipalities and municipal authorities, as to it begs the question as to whether it's prudent for the borough to actually convey the assets to the authority under these circumstances. And I go into some more depth in the memorandum itself, but I basically outlined three options that I see for the borough moving forward with respect to the assets. Option one would be for the borough to continue owning the assets and to continue operating and managing the system itself without really any involvement of the authority whatsoever. So it would basically be maintaining the status quo as of 2018 without involvement with any of the operations with the sanitary sewer system. And in the memo, I go through some pros and cons with respect to that. Option two would be for the borough to maintain ownership of the assets, but to have an operations and maintenance agreement with the authority, similar to what you have in place today, but I would want to have a more robust operating agreement with the authority with respect to the rights, duties, and obligations of all the parties involved. But under the second scenario, the municipal authority would be making decisions with respect to the operations and maintenance of the system. They'd be making decisions with respect to perhaps improvements to the system, and potentially the authority could undertake borrowing and could go out and borrow money on its own to fund capital improvements to the system. Yet eventually the ownership of the system would rest with the borough, and there would still be a flow of capital back to the borough, or say a flow of revenue back to the borough to pay for the debt service that the borough has on the system. earlier tonight, you heard the report from PFM, they're talking about the $9.8 million of the bond that was issued back in 2020. That was to refinance sewer debt that the borough currently holds with respect to the sewer system. So the fact that the borough is holding that $9.8 million of debt on the sewer system, in my mind, suggests that it's in the best interest of the borough to maintain ownership of that asset in order to ensure the flow of revenue back to the borough. The third option that I outlined in my memo would be a close of the system to the authority. The authority would have full operational control of the system, and through that arrangement, then the authority could, or the authority would have an obligation to send revenue back to the borough so the borough could pay its debt service on it, $9.8 million. There's a lot of work involved with that, and I think that's, in my opinion, that's the least favorable option. That was the option that was, I believe, originally contemplated, but because of a number of issues outlined in the memo, in my opinion, the best option would be option 1 or option 2 that I just outlined. Just very, very quickly, one of the things that I think is important to keep in mind is that when it comes to a municipal authority and versus a borough council, in this case, making decisions with respect to a sewer system, there are a couple of issues to keep in mind. Number one, when it comes to setting sewer rates and making decisions with respect to capping fees that are charged to customers, that can be a politically unsavory situation. And one of the benefits of a municipal authority is that authority members are appointed to their positions for 5-year terms, and authority members are shielded somewhat from political pressure when it comes to elections every 2 years. And so authority members can't be voted out of office. It's a 5-year term. As opposed to a council member, if council members are making decisions with respect to sewer rates and capping fees that might be politically unpopular, but actually fiscally prudent decisions, that can lead to problems when it comes to the overall operation of the system. So I'll just share that with you. The other piece also is that because of the stability of rotating 5-year terms on the municipal authority, that not in all cases, but it tends to lend itself to stability with respect to corporate knowledge and the decisions that are made with respect to the operation of the sewer system in this case, because you don't have folks who are being voted out of office or deciding to step down from political office. You have folks who are in an appointed position and typically shielded from the political aspect of municipal operations. So that's sort of a long-winded synopsis of my memorandum that I have for you. I'm happy to answer any questions now, but my hope is that when we come back in 2 weeks, that we can have further discussion about this memorandum, answer questions that you might have, and ultimately, my goal is for council to make a decision with respect to the sewer system assets and how you would like to move forward as it relates to the authority, so that we can put this to rest. I'm happy to answer any questions right now.
So, Sir Cassidy, in your research, the authority didn't exist, is it, from the 1980s until 2018, is that correct? It did exist, but it had to be reincorporated.
It had to be reinstated. It was reinstated in 2018.
Mm-hmm. You know, like at what point it went into, I think it was in the 1980s, it ceased to actually, there was no one on the board, so it didn't meet.
I think you're correct. That's the last that we could find minutes for. That's the last board that we could find was I want to say mid-80s.
And that's when council took back
Yeah.
the control over the sewer treatment plant.
And
So from the 1980s until 2018, it operated under borough, under the control of council.
yeah, but there was, yes.
And, yeah, just wanted to clarify that. Any other questions?
Thank you, Solicitor Cassidy. And then the last thing on our public works and safety items is discussion on crosswalk safety. I know something that's been coming up recently, well, not recently, but it's been a long time thing, is pedestrian safety on the streets of Mechanicsburg. So I just kind of wanted to bring this up as a discussion point, maybe some ideas or possibilities that we can start with making our community a little safer for crosswalking, in the crosswalks for our community members.
I have a question related to crosswalks, and I don't know if you can give me the answer or not. Is it possible to have EK Services go back and repave what they have paved over? They've paved over speed limit, written, 25-mile-per-hour speed limits. They've paved over school markings, they've paved over crosswalks. I think it's a big issue.
Now this time of year, they're not going to paint, no.
No, I know, but in the spring.
Yeah.
Because it seems like, since they are the ones who dug it up and are the ones who repaved it, they should have been
Here's
the
the other part
ones
of it.
repainted.
If they're legal crosswalks, they will redo them. There's one that everyone is up in arms about, is the one that crossed Market Street, South Market Street at Elmwood. That was not a legal crosswalk. PennDOT does not recognize that because it basically come out of those people's driveway across the street.
Right.
And there's no ADA access on that other side of the street, so PennDOT would not let them put that back in there.
Okay.
So there's situations like that all over town. Yes, Suez, they're going at work for Suez. Part of Suez's contract is that has to be restored, yes.
Okay.
They should not restore just the missing part of school, they should.
Right, repaint the
And I guess that was the
That's gonna be a big fight there. That's what we can say.
to discuss this, so like once the spring comes back around, we can make sure that these are things that are being done.
Yeah, and I know, like, from my perspective, I live on Simpson, and so there's lots of alleys that come out. Even when I'm creeping out, there's shrubbery and vehicles that you can't see around, or even buildings, so there's a lot of really tricky navigation. So I do think that this discussion needs to happen, because I know, going outside of Bucher's, there's been quite a few pedestrian accidents, but pulling out from that intersection, it's really hard to navigate and to creep and crawl out there. I often worry that I'm gonna tap someone, even going slowly around that, so I don't know, and I'm a safe driver.
Well, and here's the situation with that, though. We did, when there was a fatality up there, we had all of those intersections like that on the state road re-looked at. They went out, Pannoni did the survey on it, they set them to state standards, all right, the site distance for the speed limit. So we can't go, it's not enforceable to go any further than what's already out there. So, there's situations where there's not much else we're going to be able to do. I mean, unless you eliminate parking all over town.
I do think that we should, not only just for the crosswalks that were impacted, or the signage on the streets that was impacted by EK Services, but other ones that have deteriorated over time throughout the borough, we need some sort of plan to keep up with painting those, because that's an important service, in terms of safety to the residents, and to keep up with painting the lines on the streets and on the crosswalks. I think that we need some sort of recurring plan to see that happen.
Yeah, because without the bright paint at night, it's very dark. There's lots of times that, there may be someone crossing the street that you may not see until you get right up there, because I think those lines are, and I know that people zip up and down Main and Simpson all of the time, and there's probably not much they can do to get them to slow down, but having those lines, because it is dark out there, maybe we could do, a crosswalk video.
I know about it.
Councilman Bucher would love to star in it, but I think that maybe some safety, like, out there doing education to people, because I also see kids just, zipping up and down the street in the middle of the, on skateboards or just walking in the middle of the night, and it's tough to see them. So maybe an overall safety or something.
I think we should keep this on our agenda for next month and maybe invite the police chief to give some suggestions.
Sure, we can,
I know we had talked about that, so, yeah. Would that be an acceptable timeframe for next?
Thanks.
Thanks, Steve. And that would end my report then.
Right. Thank you. Property, Parks and Recreation, Councilwoman Wynn.
So there hasn't been a rec board meeting since the last council meeting, but I do have an update in that I had mentioned that there was a gentleman who was interested in partnering sort of with us, helping us maybe plan for skate park at Kosher. But unfortunately, due to family circumstances, he kind of had to pull out. So he did mention it to Fantastic, but at the time of his update, he had not heard back from Fantastic if they would be interested in looking at that. We do have discussion about pool rates, daily rates, and lifeguard payment, increasing that to $12.50, and then it's also increasing the pool rate, and discussion on getting bids for the slide maintenance. Councilman Bucher, do you have any updates on your?
Yeah, so the past meeting for the Environmental Advisory Council did not technically take place because there was not a quorum. But I have some just quick brief updates from the Shade Tree Commission. I know, so as you guys know, the Shade Tree Commission in the last year and a half or so, it was kind of in a weird state of flux. There's enough members to have meetings now, so they're making some progress in regards to their planning out the use of the Wildcat funds. So they're investigating how to use the Wildcat funds. They're taking a look at the Shade Tree Rules and Regulations booklet. But most notably is that use of the Wildcat funds, they're looking at doing some tree plantings in the parks, which is pretty exciting, and I'm trying to find different methods of finding people to plant them and care for them in like the first year or so. But that'll be the interim report.
So Councilman Bucher, and that was at the Scout Troop that would be interested in volunteering, so I'll connect you with them.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, and then for the discussion about the pool daily rate, my laptop died, so now I have to try to look at my phone.
I can run this part.
Oh, you got it?
Yeah,
Okay, all right.
So,
All right.
The first thing we have is discussion on the invitation to bid for the pool slide renovation for the 2022 season, with recommendations from the committee for the solicitor and engineer to review council's action at the next review meeting. Did everybody have a chance to review that? So, I guess I'll just ask the committee, is it okay with the committee if we send that to the solicitor and the engineer for their review?
Yes.
Yes. Sounds good, so we'll move forward with that. Roger, you can facilitate.
I will do that. Thank you.
Discussion on the increase to the starting pay rate for lifeguards at the Mechanicsburg Area School to $12.50 per hour.
I just have a question about the overall, obviously, in order to attract workers, we need to make sure the pay is competitive and so on, but, from discussions at the rec board meeting, as far as sustainability of raising pool pass rates versus paying lifeguards more, has there been discussion about how to improve the, concession stand and make it more maybe profitable and maybe something that can help, ease the impact of raising, staff funding?
Yes, we have discussed some things concerning the concession stand. Nothing's been set in stone. We've kind of thought about, one idea I had, which I don't know, I haven't looked into it very, very far, was doing, vending machines. Like, you can get vending machines with ice cream, Dippin' Dots type thing, ice cream treats, chips, drinks, sodas. That would eliminate a couple paid positions in the concession stand. It would eliminate food waste, from buying hot dogs and hot dog buns and things that don't get used and just get tossed at the end of the season or whatever happens to them. And, you know, if we have supplemental items like ice cream treats and things like that, people can bring their own food in to the pool. So, and a lot of people are interested in that. You know, you see everything on Facebook, right? But people get so upset when they say, I can't take a pizza to the pool, and, you know, gets everybody all riled up. So, I think that would be, that's just one of my ideas on how to save a little bit of money in the concession area. And then the raising of daily rates, we're hoping will garner more season pass sales. So that'll be more, you know, incoming revenue for the pool then.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe want to make a recommendation, have that on council's agenda for our next meeting. Yeah. And the committee recommends approval of that?
Yes. Yeah, the committee, yes. And the board also voted on it.
And the board voted on it?
Yes, yes. And it was approved.
Discussion on the increase to the daily entry rates, I guess, relating to the same topic. The attachment there is 06 and 07, and did the committee have time to review?
Yeah, we, that was what we came up with as a committee. It was voted on and approved by the rec board and by the committee.
So the committee is good with forwarding that to council for its next meeting with the recommendation to approve that.
Yes.
Do you have anything else, Council?
I do not, just the slide, whatever.
You already got that.
Got that.
Yeah. One question I have is, Manager Sosky, you passed out the pool agreement?
Yes,
When are
yeah.
you looking at having us approve that?
Council directed the solicitor to review that last meeting.
Last meeting.
We can put it on next, if he's ready, put it on next. I know that he has some issues going on, and I didn't want to push him on this to get ready for this.
What's the last date you really need? And is there still any negotiation back and forth on that, or?
No, as far as I know, the school board has already approved it, what was sent down. So if there's any changes made, it's been the same thing for the last, I want to say 6 years, 7 years. So, the only thing that changes is the dates and, what we pay.
If we did anything different with the concession stand, would it require us to change that agreement?
No, because the employees there are ours.
Okay.
The employees at the front desk, the lifeguards, and the concession workers are ours. They only provide management services, so they would be our workers.
Any other questions, committee members? Moving on to Personnel Committee, Councilman Agerton.
Due to an illness that I sustained, we did not meet, but we will be meeting this week. So I'll have a report next time for everyone.
Thank you. Any other questions for personnel? Okay. Moving on, we are going to move on to citizens' comment, and I want to first apologize. I saw a lot of residents come in after we started the meeting, came in around 7:30, and I wanted to make the announcement that we have changed, starting January 3rd, the way the council meeting is structured. We start the first meeting of the month at 7 o'clock, and we moved the council meeting to the first part of that, so that it allows us to complete the council meeting first and continue with the committee meetings afterwards, which gives us more time to conduct business. And it allows for us to make recommendations, which is required under the sunshine law. If we talk about something in committee tonight, we can't vote on it, so it has to be carried forward to the next meeting, so that it's advertised, properly advertised. So that's why we changed the meeting agenda. So I apologize if you came here tonight with the anticipation of commenting at the beginning of the meeting. But now we'll open it up for citizens' comment. We are continuing with the policy for 3 minutes for each person who wishes to comment, and we only ask that you state your name and address for the record. So at this time, if there's anybody that would like to speak, you're welcome to do so.
My name is Nancy Lilly. I live at 417 West Main Street. I have 2 things I'd like to share with council. I don't have a copy for everybody, I'm sorry, but I think you can share it. Okay. To foster historic preservation in an area of Mechanicsburg has been designated as the historic district, and that's been around, I don't know the exact dates, but it's been a while, and a HARB, the Historical Architectural Review Board, was established to review projects within that historic district area, and they approve, disapprove, make suggestions, and then their recommendation comes to council for a vote. My husband and I have been through this process several times in renovating a house, a substantial renovation. Next I'll move to the building permit. Right now, there is a building permit. I know Mr. Szewski talked about revamping the building permit. Right now, there is a building permit on the website that is the building permit that, if it's on the website, is currently in use until that is officially changed. And it is the building permit that was in use at the time the owner applied for a building permit for the reconstruction of 426 West Simpson Street. Did you guys get my packet? Good. So you know what I'm talking about here. This permit is marked as complete, yet under HARB district, there is nothing. This is not an optional question. It is a question on this building permit that is intended to be answered if it doesn't indicate otherwise. There's nothing there. This property did not go to HARB in the beginning, and as a result, we now have somewhat of a fiasco situation because there are HARB ordinances where if the facade of the building is going to be changed, that's not in historical context. HARB is supposed to help maintain historical context. The photos that I gave you guys just now give you an idea of how out of context that building is when you look what it looks like next to the adjoining buildings. That is what neighbors are looking out of the back of their house every day, out of every window. That's what we see. And it is not historically correct. The borough was not doing due diligence when this application was submitted. There were things that were not filled in, important stuff, square feet of new construction. That's necessary to determine whether or not that new construction is in excess of what's allowed. Because I know it's a percentage, I don't remember what the percentage is. A correction to what was said tonight, that this property was previously for apartments. For as long as I have lived there, it has been a duplex. The owner lived in one side until she passed away about 2 years ago, and another gentleman lived on the other side. He had lived in that side of that duplex with his parents until they died. So he was there in his very younger years, perhaps even in school, and he continued living there after they passed away. When the owner passed away and her family cleaned that out, he moved to the other side, and there was a renter in the side he had been in. It has been 2 units. It never was 4 apartments. So I would like to correct that, and we have some neighbors here who can speak to that as well.
Thank you, Mrs. Lee.
Richard Ruler, 417 West Main Street. I'm Nancy's husband. The story began on a pleasant afternoon, August 3rd. We all know what happened. Nancy and I and our daughter were on the back patio looking out. Bang, fire, smoke going into the air. Nancy called 911. We all know what happened. This was a tragic situation potentially, but if it wasn't for the good work of Chief Neff and his brave people, we had something to celebrate in September. A man's life was saved. I was a small part of his resuscitation. A story that would have ended as a victory, as a story, until now when we sit out on our patio that same way looking out, what I see is 4 stories, a basement and 3 stories above it, that were not there. It was not like that. And now it totally takes away from the skyline of what I'm looking out at. In addition, in front of that, which is the back of the building, is been mountains of trash that have blown all over our property. We're picking it up all the time. There's stones and rubber that are dangerous to kids. There's no mud containment. Mud is flowing into the alley. The alley is full of ruts from the heavy equipment. It's a mess. Now that can be cleaned up, but the structure itself is going to be there if the plans go through as such. And this is not consistent with the appearance that it should be. We're looking at it, and this is a disaster. It's taking away from the property value of us, the residents, the neighborhood, and we intend to do something about it. We do not appreciate that this project will be approved retroactively when it should not have been approved in the first place. And we believe that the borough is taking the wrong approach in trying to undo the problem by getting it approved, what is being done, approved retroactively when it should not have been approved in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. My name is Ian Gardner. I live at 422 West Simpson Street, next door to 426 West Simpson. Thank you, Mr. Sikorsky, for responding to previous concerns that were raised in December. Unfortunately, I don't think that revising the building permit application solves the problems at hand, and the fact that the building permit application that we've been able to look at wasn't actually respected or enforced by the borough, to the point where the applicant did not even sign the application, as far as I'm correct. I don't understand how that would have been approved, let alone the HARB discussion. In addition to that, there were rudimentary sketches that clearly show a change to the original building footprint, with that 4th story being expanded and 2 whole stories or 3 whole stories being put on the back side. So there's no mention of that. One huge red flag is only $25,700 projected for the cost of the project. That might be able to get windows and maybe a roof on there if you do it cheaply, but for what's being done to restore half of the building, and likely more than that, since the entire electrical, all of the floors need to be redone, all of the walls, that's just absurd. We've seen repeated problems and shortcuts taken by this owner that damage our property, despite repeated attempts to come to a resolution and just meet basic standards, setting boundaries for ourselves. They've been disrespected repeatedly, trash blowing around
having broken glass, nails, and roofing materials leaf blown off the roof into our area where we house our animals. It's gotten out of control, and I don't know how it can be stopped. It's getting a bit absurd, so let something be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments?
Yes. One of the things of interest to me with the borough, my name's Paulette Matthews, and I live on 611 East Keller Street. One of the things that I have made a point of being at each of these meetings, it has to do with finance and budgeting. And what I've heard tonight has some significant things that relate to the budget and financing for the borough. In particular, I know that the Recreation Board is suggesting some changes to their procedures, and I believe they are good ones and ones that we need. However, I ask, are they included in the 2022 budget? And if not, why are we talking about it now when it should have been done at last year when we were doing our budget? That's number one. Number two is the $420,000 that we're now going to write toward the wages and benefits, or wages, I don't know what kind of calculation, because this is the first time I've heard it. I'd like to know how that's going to affect the budget, because you're going to have another $420,000, and it appears you're saying you're going to use that with wages again. So that's going to totally change your revenue base, and it wasn't in the revenue for 2022, because I looked at it very closely. So you're going to have $420,000 more than what was in your budget. How are you going to make that work? Are you going to prepare a revised budget? Because that's what I would expect as the accountant. So I would like to know that answer to that question on how that's going to be dealt with. I think that's enough for you guys.
Thank you. Thanks, Ms. Matthews.
Sure.
Did you state your name and address? I don't.
I did.
You did.
Yes,
You did.
yes.
Thank you. Any other citizen comment?
Hi, my name is Mary Cameron. My name is Mary. I live at 143 East Main Street. I'm just here to voice my concerns about the recent arrest with Mr. Buhrig and what was going to proceed with that, and where you guys were going to go with that. So that's it. Thank you.
Any other comments? Seeing none, thank you everyone for your comments tonight. I want you to know that we hear your concerns and that we consider them carefully. Everyone, any other business? Going down the line.
I have one. She said no. I have one, sir. The letter received from True Self Tattoo, Dustin Daimler. This is similar to the one we received for South Walnut Street, for a zoning modification. My name is Dustin Daimler, and I'm looking to open up a tattoo studio at the location 33 West Main Street. I live in the borough, 1205 Gross Drive. My daughters will be going to Mechanicsburg School District. My roots are in Mechanicsburg, and I want to build upon them. I want my business to be a part of the community. The Jubilee Day, the trick-or-treating with the kids, the rent drop, and so much more this town has to offer. He's asking for permission to look at the regulations that we have against tattoo parlors. I can provide my hours of operation and business license with ease. The part of the regulation, actually the zoning ordinance he's talking about, requires that tattoo studios be on the second floor of buildings in the commercial main and market district. There's no commercial space on the second floors within Mechanicsburg, and this also does interfere with the ADA. So what he's asking is the borough of Mechanicsburg to look at revising the zoning ordinance or the definitions of tattoo parlors and how they are permitted or not permitted in the zoning district. The other one is, last night, as Councilman Agerton spoke about, was a very good county commissioners outreach meeting, and they spoke about quite a few things. They finally settled on a radio brand, so we, at least now, we can start looking at prices. They're talking about a 40% discount, but we're still gonna be in the $300,000 to $400,000 range for radios, I think. Chief Myers has already gotten a very good deal on portable radios, so we're looking at mobiles and a few other ones. I know Chief Neff, you rated the state police, I believe, and you got a bunch of radios to use.
They're old though.
Yeah, they're old ones, don't need to change.
The trends for the P-25, we do not have any in the system.
Right, they chose apparently Motorola as their base models, the radio style that they're gonna go with. So they'll be looking at those here probably, they're saying go live at the end of 2023, I believe, is what they said, Sarah?
Correct.
Okay, discussion across the board about the ARP funds that the county has. They have, 47 million that they're looking at as to how they want to use it. There's a survey out online, that they want to use theirs for different things. They are not allowed to do what we're allowed to do according to the Treasury's final rules, so, they're gonna be looking at different ways that they can spend that 47 million. The tolling of I-83 bridge was also discussed. Commissioner Fauci seems to think that that is a done deal, that we will be seeing that in the near future. On that note, good note, I'll end.
Thank you, Manager Sisitsky. Councilman Martin,
I don't have anything, thank you.
Councilman Hill. I have nothing further, Councilman Agerton.
Just to echo, if you guys are interested how the county is spending their money, please go and take the survey online. I think it's really important that you guys speak up for the things that need to be done. There is a lot of things that people want, and those radios in particular that we were speaking of, the capabilities, my kind of novice take to it is that it's going to increase communications between different counties and municipalities to help. They even said that we could talk to Perry County on those radios with the new system that they have. So I think all of those things are really great. We just need to, encourage the county to release funds where we want them to be released. And I do believe that the tolling of 83 is a done deal, with pending litigation from many municipalities. Was it Lemoyne that was heading that?
Lemoyne is heading it,
I agree to that.
I think Johnson, I think you guys are involved in that.
They were encouraging other municipalities if they wanted to get on board, to get on board.
The solicitor for Camp Hill is the one kind of spearheading the.
Correct.
Yeah.
So we have, if I may, on that point, there's a consortium of municipalities that are on the West Shore that are joining together to initiate litigation against PennDOT over claims regarding violation of the state laws regarding these public-private partnerships and the act that PennDOT is relying upon in terms of the tolling of Interstate 83 South Bridge. The municipalities that are currently involved in the discussions to be involved with that consortium are Campbell, Lemoyne, Williamsburg, New Cumberland, Lower Allen, possibly Hampton Township, and I believe the county is looking to possibly get involved with that litigation as well. And they would anticipate filing suit in the coming days, literally. So my understanding is that PennDOT is planning to award the proposal to one of several entities that are submitting proposals for the tolling project. They anticipate awarding that in the month of February. So the goal is to have litigation initiated this month before that award is made. If Mechanicsburg Borough is interested in participating, I can get some more information regarding that process and what that might look like.
That is all I have.
I have nothing further.
I have nothing else.
Two things from me. One, for people who are concerned about public safety, I would implore you to tell the county that funding needs to be spent on the radios, because there are no municipalities in the county that have funds sitting around to use. And the county obviously has $47 million that if they're asking surveys of residents of the county, they have no idea what they're spending that money on. And secondly, don't believe the groundhog tomorrow.
Spoken like a true weatherman.
Lastly, since we're on the radio topic, we do use the services of Perry County. In here, Shermansdale in particular, they come in whenever we have a fire, they're one of the recall services for the borough, as well as we also have exchange out there. But the radio project in principle would be a hit to our budget, which would be out for the capital side, it's the only way we're able to support it. Those funds are accrued, would be probably around in the market of $250,000 to $275,000. We currently have about 56 portables in the borough of Mechanicsburg, plus we have additional, I think 9 mobiles. So it's a huge cost. So thanks for any support you could offer. That's all I have.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. We are going to recess to an executive session on a matter of personnel, no action to be taken.